Welcome back. Big game tonight. The Arizona Diamondbacks in the NLCS for the first time since 2007, taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Coming in live from Philly, Alex Weiner, Arizona Sports, covers the Diamondbacks, doing a great job. We wanted to bring some fresh faces in. Obviously, I'm not Brad. He's someone you might not have heard of yet unless you're following Arizona Sports, but someone that you should go follow on Twitter and check out for all this awesome coverage. First off, Alex, first time in Philly?
First time in Philly. Yeah, no,
Okay.
never been to the city before. Hadn't been to Citizens Bank Park before going to their workouts yesterday. So yeah, totally new experience.
Have you gotten a Philly cheesesteak yet?
Not yet, but that will be, I'll have to before I leave, either today or tomorrow for sure.
All right, that'll be on the list. But of course, the main thing on the list there for you, covering these first two games in Philadelphia. It's going to be interesting for the Diamondbacks, right? You get your two best starters lined up with Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly to go. They'd go games 5 and 6 as well, according to Torrey, because they're not going to go on short rest. But how are they stacking up? How are you kind of seeing things stacking up ahead of game one tonight with the pitching matchup?
Yeah, it's Zach Gallen versus Zach Wheeler in game one. So those are two aces. Two pitchers who have pitched very, very well in the postseason as well. I mean, Zach Wheeler had a good postseason run with the Phillies last year in their road to the World Series. He's continued that this year after a productive season. And then, yeah, game two, Merrill Kelly, it looks like it'll go against Aaron Nola. And then once you get back to Chase Field, then there's sort of more questions as far as, okay, it looks like Brandon Pfaadt will be game three. Who exactly is going to go game four for the Diamondbacks? The Phillies haven't announced their game four starter yet. Looks like Ranger Suarez will go game three. So there's still some pieces to figure out. It's a little different because, with the NLDS, they had the days off so they can kind of reset things and go Merrill and Zach, 4 to the 5 games if it went the distance. This will be different because it's 7 games potentially in 9 days. So you're going to have to, lean on a little bit of a longer rotation, which isn't something that the D-backs necessarily have at the moment. So yeah, it also just kind of harps on how important these first 2 games are with your top 2 starters going in Philadelphia and how vital potentially a split would be to go back home to Chase Field.
So off the bat, too, I have to say this. I mean, Philly is favored for a reason. They should be favored in this series. That is not a knock on the Diamondbacks. It's just the way things are. Philly was there last year. But this Diamondbacks team has been impressive. To me, I've been impressed with Torrey Lovullo's decision-making, especially with managing the pitching. He has a very short leash on everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Brandon Pfaadt. You're getting into trouble at a certain point in the game. It's gone like that. So that's something to keep an eye on in this series where I think the Diamondbacks could have an edge. But where are some places that you think, Arizona really needs to do a good job in order to beat the Phillies 4 out of 7?
I think just to keep controlling the controllables, I suppose, would be a good way to put it. They've played a cleaner brand of baseball all season than the Phillies have, especially defensively. And that has carried over into the postseason with the Diamondbacks. I mean, they've played really clean baseball. They've had kind of, limited the fat with the pitching wise, as far as like putting runners on base and getting themselves into too many jams. They've gotten into some and they've gotten out of most of them at this point. But they've played, as far as just like kind of making sure you're not beating yourself, that's something that the D-backs have done really well in this postseason, and they're going to have to against the Phillies because this is a Phillies lineup that, up and down. And Zach Gallen said this when asked about what stands out about the Phillies is just like they have power everywhere. So if you give them extra opportunities, an extra at bat here or there can make the difference if somebody, gets a hold of one. So just continue to play clean baseball. The D-backs, obviously they'll have this a little bit of a on the bases advantage as well here if they can kind of create some chaos. I know it's been mostly power for them in the postseason, which has been a little bit different than the regular season, but that's another way where, okay, even if the power isn't quite there, if they can kind of manufacture runs by working a walk, stealing second, that kind of a deal, I think those two things will be something to look at as far as sort of differences between these two teams.
Yeah, they were the top team in baseball this year in bunting, in sack bunts. That was what I believe I heard in the Dodgers series. And that was kind of the difference in that series. And especially now where the Dodgers pitching was not necessarily bad, but the Phillies pitching, at least their starters, are kind of another step ahead of that. So I think that's something to keep an eye on is kind of how they, get into the small ball, because at this point in the postseason, you can't rely on the long ball. The home runs are going to come in big moments, and the team that usually hits the most in those big moments is the team that wins. But I think beyond that, it's who's going to make the small plays. And the Diamondbacks kind of do have an edge there. We've seen it all year with them, and it's a group that even the young guys, they kind of buy into that, right?
Yeah. And I think just giving yourself opportunities to score is such a big deal here because, yeah, sure. I mean, maybe the home runs don't make the difference, but, so far in these postseason, I mean, the timely home run has absolutely
Hmm.
done that. And, a 3-run homer in the fourth inning tonight could be just completely be the difference in how the series starts. So sorry about that. Anyway, um, yeah, so just getting yourself the opportunity, either like working walks and finding the right pitches. I mean, Mike Hazen has talked about it when asked about the power. It's just like they are finding the right pitches to hit. And that comes from kind of a mature approach, checking off the right pitches, fouling off the right pitches. So, yeah, while they can certainly scratch off a few with, small ball and creating opportunities, and that's a potential difference maker here, just continuing to have the mature at bats that they've been having, I think it's going to be huge.
Any concerns that you see going into this? Like, do you think the bullpen's been used a lot? Do you think that's even something that Torrey's concerned about? Like, you're there in Philly, you got a chance to kind of be around the team yesterday a little bit. Any sort of concerns that you kind of look at and you're like, this might be something that could give them struggles in these first two games?
Not necessarily with the bullpen in particular. I mean, it's been a great unit over the last,
Mm-hmm.
8 weeks now. And it's been terrific in the postseason so far. They've had a few days off. We'll see what happens when they come back to it. They had, you know, a scrimmage where they played like an inter squad scrimmage the other day with the crowd noise pumped in at Chase Field. Some workouts, some bullpens. So Paul Sewald, I think, said the other day that it's not going to be an excuse having the layoff just because had the opportunities to do what they've needed to do to stay sharp. But at the same time, it's a few days off and then right into this crazy environment in Philadelphia that a lot of them haven't experienced quite to this level before. So, we'll see if there's any sort of lingering effect. I wouldn't think so necessarily. It's just mostly just going to be about execution. As far as going down later in the series, what they do in games 3 and 4 and how they manage the pitching staff when they're not going to have their top two guys on the mound, that is more so where, okay, in my head, I'm like, okay, how are they going to piece that together? Because if those are two back-to-back days where you're going to be leaning heavily on the bullpen if you don't get a ton out of your starters, and we don't even know who both the starters are going to be at this point, that's where I have a little bit of a question.
Yeah, I think, we both were in the room when people were asking Tori about that because it will be interesting, looking ahead to games 3 and 4. You potentially have 40 plus outs to get with your pen. I mean, Brandon Pfaadt's had a short leash and maybe he's earned a little bit of a longer one, depending on where the series is at that point, whether they're up 2-0, 1-1, down 0-2, coming into game 3. I think that could be a difference maker, but I think that's going to be the part of the series, regardless of what happens in games 1 and 2. I don't think, that's going to be what seals the series, whether the Diamondbacks steal one in Philly or don't. I think games 3 and 4 and how that's managed is going to really be the pivotal point in this series. Do you kind of feel similar in that regard, just based on, how they're going to have to use it? Because the Phillies are in a similar situation. I mean, they have maybe an extra guy that they might, trust to start necessarily, but it doesn't necessarily change things as far as, how they're going to have to manage the bullpen either. But I think that might be one of the big keys to the series is how's game 3 and 4 work with the pitching.
Sure. And that's all set up by how games 1 and 2 go, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if it's split in Philadelphia and then you can split games 3 and 4 and get back to your top starters, I think you feel pretty good. But if the Phillies win the first two and you have to rely on, maybe a Brandon Pfaadt and a Ryan Nelson start and a heavy bullpen innings to keep you alive, then that might be a little bit different. So yeah, games 3 and 4, again, it's just sort of the question on how they're going to approach it. I think, we kind of know how they'd approach a Brandon Pfaadt start at this point. It's going to be 18 hitters plus or minus a few, depending on how he's doing. And then we'll see what happens in game 4. But yeah, the tone will all be set by these first two games on how they can kind of approach the rest of the series.
Alex Weiner, Arizona Sports, here with us, a guy that you guys should be following if you're following along this postseason with the Diamondbacks, doing great coverage all year long, and that continues here in the postseason. Just got a couple more things, Alex. And do you put any weight into the crowd noise? I know the guys, they're never going to say, oh, that's going to be tough. Like they're there, they're like, oh, we're excited for it, and I think that's valid. Do you put
Yeah.
any weight on, how this crowd in Philadelphia is going to affect this team early on?
I think so, just because again, the Diamondbacks have handled being in new positions as far as the postseason really well so far. But what they've also been able to do is kind of take out the home crowd. I mean, with the Dodgers, I mean, they jumped out 6-0 in the first inning of the first game, then 3-0 in the first inning of the next game. So they were able to kind of like take that advantage away a little bit. This is a Phillies crowd that, we saw it against the Braves where just how crazy it got. That was, that kind of had the added element of being a division rivalry game, and the Braves gave them some bulletin board material for sure. So maybe that was a little bit different, but yeah, it's gonna be different. And when they practice with the crowd noise pumped in, they practice a lot of their nonverbal communication to try to make sure that was sharp. So they're planning on it being a factor. So I don't think it's going to be just like something to, just be like, if it's noisy, it's noisy. It is what it is. But at the same time, I think Christian Walker had this line yesterday where he said, you want to get excited, but don't let that affect your execution.
That seems to be the mix of the perfect veterans on this team. Walker being one of the guys that's been around for a while. Evan Longoria seems like the perfect guy to spring into this team. I know maybe throughout the season fans are like, why is this guy playing third base? He's old. He can't do this. He can't do that. But in the postseason, I think he's been maybe one of the most important players. He's made some great plays. He's looking kind of spry over there at third base, but the leadership and the way that he helps this team carry that, I think that, has something to be said, because they kind of have that good mix of young talent that is wiser beyond their years. I mean, Corbin Carroll looks like a 10-year vet already. Like the way he talks, the way he acts, like he might act like a 23-year-old kid when they're celebrating and having all that in the clubhouse, but on the field, he looks like he's 33. So I think Longoria might be one of the guys that is kind of given them that culture this postseason.
Yeah, you talk about the mix. It's kind of ingrained in there at this point, right? Because you have the kind of the holdovers who were there the last time they made the playoffs, like Christian Walker, Ketel Marte, who have been through everything with them. Some newer veterans like Gallen and Kelly, who came on sort of during more of the down years a little bit. And then now this influx of young talent, and then they go out and get more veteran leadership, like you mentioned, Longoria, and then Tommy Pham and Paul Sewald. And so it's this great blend of because we talk about how youthful of a team this is, but they really are reliant on some of these veterans and have been this postseason for some major contributions. So yeah, I think you're totally right about how that has sort of created this culture where it's like an influx of young energy, but at the same time with guys who kind of know what they're doing up at the major leagues and have for a few years. And so I think that has all made them more dangerous this time of year, particularly.
Gabby Moreno, good to go. It looks like. Is that the case?
Looks like he's good to go. Yeah, he took batting practice yesterday on the field. He said afterward that it didn't impact his swing after he got that hand contusion from the final game of the Dodgers series. And so it seems like they'll be all good as far as health is concerned.
All right. Last thing, I'll put you on the spot. If you don't have an answer, I'll let you cop out. But do you have a prediction how you think this series is going to roll?
Oh boy, I get to cop out.
If you really want to, I guess I'll give you that option. I know your position, but if you want to make a prediction, why not?
Yeah, I don't make a ton of predictions. I mean, I understand why the Phillies are favored in this. I mean, they've been here before. They have the veteran lineup who has tons of postseason experience in it. And they got hot at the right time down the stretch of this. In the second half of the season, a lot of their star players got hot at the right time. And they have so many guys up and down that lineup who can change the series with one swing. So I totally understand that. At the same time, the Diamondbacks haven't lost this postseason yet. They're getting a little bit more of a power influx than they had. It's a little bit more uncharacteristic than what we've seen in the regular season, but the playoffs are different. It's a clean slate. So would it surprise me if the Diamondbacks, shocked everybody like around the country and did this? Not really, but at the same time, I understand why the Phillies are favored here.
Great stuff, Alex.
A little bit of a cop out.
A little bit, but I get the game. Well, appreciate you taking the time, Alex, from Philly in the hotel room. Have fun tonight covering the game. And yeah, everyone watching, you can follow Alex on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle? Is it Alex J. Weiner?
Correct. Yeah.
Boom. All right. Appreciate it, Alex. Have a good one. Thank you.
All right. You too. Thank you.